Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this special weather briefing. My name is Sid King, and I'll be giving you a rundown on what we can expect and what promises to be an active few days of severe weather. To begin, we're going to talk about some main points. We have several rounds of active severe weather that are expected between this afternoon and through Thursday. The first round of active weather is expected to begin this afternoon. We have a marginal risk generally along and south of the I-20 corridor, and we're furthermore expecting additional heavy rain to occur in west and central Georgia along a boundary of a wedge we have set up over the far northern parts of the state. The primary severe weather impacts today are going to be flooding due to heavy rain, especially if we have training cells over the same area through tonight. We're going to be looking at the potential for damaging wind gusts, which could bring down trees and power lines. We're going to have a risk for hail. And finally, a brief tornado cannot be ruled out. Also, our second round of active weather is expected from Wednesday afternoon into Thursday. There's going to be individual severe thunderstorms developing in the warm sector ahead of the main line of storms on Wednesday afternoon and during the night. And then the main line of strong to severe storms is going to enter northwest Georgia during the overnight hours and move southeast through the area on Thursday. We have a different grouping of severe weather impacts with it, mostly damaging wind gusts. You could have winds over 60 miles per hour in some portions of the line that could bring down trees and power lines. There is a threat for tornadoes associated with this system. We can't rule out a stronger long-track tornado as well. And also hail of an inch or a little greater, primarily in central Georgia during the day on Thursday. And finally, throughout this, there's the threat that heavy rainfall could lead to the potential for flash flooding and river flooding concerns during both rounds. So as we begin today, here's our environmental setup. And outlined in blue here, we have our wedge boundary that's set up over the area. And this wedge is going to remain across northeast Georgia through the afternoon today. We have cooler temperatures, as you can see, in the 40s here in the wedge, and warmer temperatures to the south and west. Along with these higher temperatures, we also have greater instability outside of the wedge. So a lot of the heaviest rain is expected along the boundary, along this blue dotted line here, during the afternoon and the evening. And of course, there's some uncertainty on exactly how far south that's going to sink throughout the course of the day today. But there's a threat that some of the storms moving in from Alabama and moving east could train over the same locations there, which could lead to a potential for some flash flooding and river flooding concerns. So here's our severe outlook today. We are a marginal risk, generally along and south of the I-20 corridor. As far as time is concerned, we're generally looking at about 3 to 10 p.m. today, with damaging winds, hail, heavy rain, and the possibility of a brief tornado all possible. Taking a closer look at timing, during the mid-afternoon, we're looking at the potential for thunderstorms entering west-central Georgia. Some of these storms could be strong to severe, capable of producing damaging winds and hail. Like I said before, the tornado threat will be low, but also non-zero, and we can't rule it out at this time. As we go into the early evening, the storms will continue to spread eastward, covering most of central Georgia. Once again, there's the potential that a few of these storms could be strong to severe. And this is going to continue to move east and south into the overnight period. Generally by about midnight, we're expecting a lot of these storms to come down, mostly degenerate back into showers. So while the severe threat will come to an end at that time, there's still the possibility you could see some additional heavy rain with these storms. And speaking of which, here is our heavy rainfall and flooding threat through tonight. Once again, we have about 1 to 2 inches of additional rain in west and central Georgia, generally along that wedge boundary. We've also received about up to 2 inches of rain across northwest Georgia during the early morning hours today. So this is all going to be in addition to that. This is also going to serve to prime the soils for the next couple of days and make it a little more likely we could see some flooding potential during Wednesday and Thursday as well. The WPC has given us a slight risk for excessive rainfall across most of central Georgia, but with the wedge boundary descending a little bit to the south, this excessive rainfall risk area, picture that being squashed down to the south a little bit. That's currently what we're thinking at this time. I'm expecting a coming update from the WPC will likely reflect that, and we'll send that out later today if that happens. So here's what our threat levels are for today. As you can see, our biggest threat, generally I'd say, if I had to put a number to it, I'd give it about a 3 out of 5, is going to be for rainfall and flooding. And then a lesser threat, but not a non-existent threat of damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes. Like I said, this is generally a picturesque marginal risk of a day. We're pretty confident on this forecast. I would give us about a 4 out of 5 on confidence. The one limiting factor of our confidence would be the exact extent of the wedge and how far south it's going to extend. Shifting gears a little bit in our severe weather outlook for the week, we're going to take a look at Wednesday and Thursday. And you've likely seen the SPC Day 2 outlook. There's currently a slight risk diagnosed across the majority of West Georgia and extending into the metro area. And even there's a tight gradient to just to the west of our area. They even have a moderate risk out in across a lot of Alabama at this time. So, of course, be aware that this is subject to change with later forecasts. As far as timing is concerned, Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to be looking at a prolonged event late Wednesday afternoon all the way through Thursday morning. Day 3, we have an enhanced risk through the day on Thursday, generally along and south of the I-85 corridor. And the reason we go right from that slight on Wednesday right to that enhanced on Thursday is we're going to be this is going to be generally right along that's going to transition from one to the other about 8 a.m. during that time. Generally, once your day 2 to day 3 SPC outlook changes, that's always a little tricky to nail down as far as the messaging goes. So we've decided to break it down a little further into the overall severe risk. So for day 2, here's a combined severe risk look. And we have an elevated risk across most of West Georgia. Damaging winds over 60 miles per hour, which, like I said, could bring down trees and power lines. The potential for tornadoes as well. We can't rule out a stronger and longer track tornado. Hail, a little more than an inch or so possibly. This is generally going to be a lesser threat. And of course, heavy rain and flooding, especially considering some of the rainfall we're going to be getting in the area today, leaving us with wet soils tomorrow. Now, one thing I want to keep in mind is this area, this elevated risk area, could be expanded or extended further to the east and become a higher level risk just because of that tight gradient we have to the west. And a lot of that is going to have to deal with, a lot of that's going to be dependent upon the discrete cells that form out ahead of the main line of storms on Wednesday. And we're going to talk about that in a couple of slides. Now, then on Thursday after 7 a.m., after the line begins to push into the area, we have high risk of severe weather, generally to the south and east of the I-85 corridor, and then even low to elevated enhanced risk elsewhere across the forecast area. All modes of severe weather are going to be expected in association with this line as it moves through the area. So let's break it down and take a look on timing. On Wednesday, late afternoon and early evening, of course, here's a Here's a convective model here, and of course don't focus on the exact timing and location of one model solution, but I'm just using this to give a general idea. We're looking at the potential for a development of discrete cells within the warm sector. You can see the line here across, kind of a broken line of storms across Louisiana and Arkansas. That's going to be our main system, but the cells ahead of it that'll be an elevated risk for damaging winds, gusts, and hail, and also we can't rule out the tornado potential during this time. And the extent of where these storms develop and how far northeast they track will also influence exactly what the risk is going to be during the afternoon and evening hours tomorrow. Going a little later, here's a look at midnight during the overnight hours. During the late night hours, the discrete cells in the warm sector are expected to weaken with the loss of daytime heating. And the main line of convection at that time we're expecting to be entering into Alabama ahead of the main cold front. Then, during the early morning hours on Thursday, well before sunrise, the main line of storms is going to be entering northwest Georgia. This is going to be the primary severe weather event with this round. The storms within this line could produce damaging winds over 60 miles per hour, and we could also be looking at the potential for brief tornadoes embedded within the line. Hail up to an inch and heavy rain is also a threat with this as well. Then Thursday morning after sunrise, this line is going to continue to move southeast through the area. Right around this time, we're around 8 a.m. or so, we've got it forecast near I-85. Of course, this isn't completely deterministic. You could always give or take a couple of hours depending on how fast the system moves. But once again, storms within this line could still be producing damaging winds and possibility of brief tornadoes. Then during the late morning and early afternoon, we continue to push southeast towards east central Georgia. Although the line looks like it'll going to be kind of losing some of the forcing with the cold front, there is the potential for warmer air and more instability in central Georgia. So although you might not have the forcing with the line, that's not going to diminish the severe threat as it continues to move into the area. So here's the best timing for severe. We've broken it up based on different regions here. Across northwest Georgia, our time window is generally about 2 to 7 a.m., generally before sunrise. Then across middle Georgia, and also including a lot of the metro area, generally between about 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. And then as we move into southeast portion of our forecast area, we're going to be looking more generally about 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. One thing to note about this graphic is this does not account for the area of active weather expected later today or through the discrete cells in the warm sector on Wednesday. And of course, always be sure to pay attention to the future iterations of the forecasts. And here's our threat levels and confidence. As you can see, our threat levels are quite a bit higher than we had for this afternoon's stuff. Looking at the highest risk, once again, being rainfall and flooding with this, especially with wet soils from today. And then in the order behind it, we have damaging winds, which would put about a 3 out of 5. Tornadoes, about a 2.5 out of 5. And then finally bringing up the rear is large hail at about 2 out of 5. The most uncertainty we have, I have a bit lower confidence in this one than the ones this afternoon, and the source of that uncertainty is the extent of the discrete cells on Wednesday, and then the exact timing of the line on Thursday. So once again, please be sure to stay up to date on the latest forecast information. And our heavy rainfall and flooding threats Wednesday and Thursday, you can see we have an additional 2 to 3 inches of rain forecast across our far northern tier. and then about 1 to 2 inches elsewhere along and north of the I-85 corridor, with progressively diminishing amounts further southeast. The WPC has a slight risk out in day 2 across North Georgia. Of course, the day 2 and day 3 excessive rainfall outlooks could change with the forecast as well. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about river flooding potential. We have a couple of river points in orange here that are forecast to reach minor flood stage the days following the heavy rainfall. So be sure to follow the AHAPS page. I have a link here on this page for the updated river and stream forecast information. So to sum everything up, we have rounds of severe and active weather between later today and into Thursday. The first round is going to be starting this afternoon with a marginal risk of severe weather along and south of the I-20 corridor. And additional heavy rain along the wedge boundary could lead to the potential for flooding, especially where training occurs along that boundary. Damaging wind gusts, hail, and a brief tornado are all possible and can't be ruled out within the marginal risk. And then we have a second round of active weather Wednesday and into Thursday. First, with some individual discrete cells that could develop in the warm sector ahead of the main line of storms, and then the main line of storms itself, strong to severe thunderstorms entering northwest Georgia overnight and moving southeast through the area on Thursday. These threats are going to be more widespread, looking at 60 mile per hour or greater damaging wind gusts, some tornadoes. Like I said before, can't rule out a stronger long-track tornado within this system. And finally, the possibility for hail. And be sure to keep up with river flooding and flash flooding concerns, as heavy rainfall will be a threat throughout. Now you may be wondering about what future updates we're going to be having as this next system comes closer. We're going to continue sending twice daily email updates, and that's going to continue through Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. We will be having another special weather briefing tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And as we transition to the severe weather operations, be sure to keep up with us in NWS chat and over social media and our NWS Atlanta webpage, because we're going to be continuing to relay updates over those platforms. And here's all of our contact information where you can get in touch with us. We'd like to thank you all for your attention and for all that you continue to do. Thank you very much.